Ready to go?
I am. I feel like, you know what it feels like, Dani? Every high jump I've ever done, like every high thing I've ever jumped off, that's what it feels like. And
Yeah.
I know it was something I had to do because I've always been afraid of heights. And so it's that same intrepidation, but when you're done, when you're finished, you're like, yes, I knew I could do it. I knew I could do it.
Good. That is excitement, right? I know
Yeah.
it feels scary, but that's excitement. And I think you should be not just excited, but like honored to tell this story because it is an amazing story. And I know so many women are going to be set free just by hearing that you went through it and you lived. You're on the other side of it. And of course, nothing is perfect. I'm not saying that
Mhm.
your trauma has disappeared, but
Yeah.
you survived and you're thriving.
Yeah. That's my hope, Dani, that somebody else who is just as afraid or just has just as much intrepidation will just feel a little more comfortable because it's like voicing it for the first time. It can be scary, but once you get over the hump, it's like all
Yeah.
those first times you stand up for yourself, the first time you say no, the first time you set a boundary and honor it for yourself, all those things. So hopefully it'll just make it easier for somebody else.
I think so. And before you go no contact and you're still caught up in the thick of it, it's hard to imagine that you can go no contact with a parent and still still have a life and enjoy it and function. It's really difficult to imagine your life outside of that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So I thank you for joining me today, for being brave and sharing this story and just being vulnerable and open. Thank you so much.
And thank you for walking with me, sister. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure. My clients, I'm telling you, give me so much life. When I get to hear from you that you've had a breakthrough, that something lifted, something shifted, that you are observing changes in your own relationship with yourself and your inner child, it makes all that I've been through worth it. Because, like I said, there was a time when I couldn't even imagine what my life would be like
Yeah.
outside of being right underneath my mother, right up under her,
Mm,
seeking and receiving her approval for every little thing.
yeah.
Yes.
It's amazing to watch that whole back journey, but it's also fascinating to watch it moving forward too. Watching how my daughter and I interact. It's just, girl, I feel like such an observer of my life sometimes. It's like, ooh, it's like watching a really good show because I get to see now, not now that I'm not so in the rat race, in the thick of the fight of it and the trauma of it all. To be able to step back and look at it, it's like, girl, do you see that pattern? Ooh, did you see that thing present itself again and again and
Yes.
again? So it's a new discovery every day.
Good. I'm okay. Good. Before we get into this, let's both introduce ourselves. So, if you are new here, you're watching the replay, whoever you are, hello and welcome. I'm Dani Ellison. I'm a reparenting coach for Black women, and I help them thrive and regain their dignity after going no contact with a narcissistic parent. And so, it is my pleasure to present to you today the lovely and gracious Miss Sondra. Will you please tell us a little bit more about you and what's going on?
Sure. My name is Sondra Jones Thigpen. I hate starting like this, but you know how every Black woman, and it's something I want to get away from, we always start with what we do and who we are in relation to others. And so I won't deviate from the script today, but I'm a retired school teacher. I'm the proud granny of four beautiful grandsugars, two girls, two boys. I have two wonderful children. Um, and I'm a trauma survivor who went no contact, which was probably one of the toughest things I ever had to do in my life. And so I'm just grateful to be able to share.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Dani.
And now I do want to acknowledge because telling this kind of story about your very personal decision to go no contact um, can be tricky. So if there's anything that you don't want to share, just let me know. Um,
Okay.
Now, I know there are some really exciting endeavors that you have going on YouTube.
Yeah,
Do you want to share that? Do you want to keep that private?
sure.
Yes,
No,
please tell them about your channel and yeah, all the amazing things you're doing.
I love sharing that. That's a part of all of the rebuilding for me, reestablishing myself in a completely different field, doing something of my own choosing, learning it from the ground up, doing it afraid. There was such a theme of fear. So even embarking on a new thing like this YouTube channel, the channel was called From Lack to Legacy. And on my channel, I help people, particularly older women, retired women, Black women, learn to trade options and stocks, really just to invest, financial literacy, the whole shebang. How do we look at money? How are we handling money? What is our money story? So much of what I do has to do with money, mindset, and investing. I find that everything starts with a mindset. And so it kind of goes hand in hand with the work that I'm doing, my self work, and the work that I have decided to do in retirement. So, yep, you can check me out. We live trade over there. We have a learning community. Everything is free resources. I'm new. I'm a newbie. So, look, I ask all the dumb questions so you don't have to. And we've created a really safe space for women to come and just kind of see if it's something you might be interested in. So, check us out.
Yes, definitely. And when we are done here, you can send me some links and I'll put them in the description for anybody who can find you through this video. All right, so let's get into this. I already know, I think you may have already said, but confirm for the people, which parent is it that you are no contact with?
My mother,
Okay.
my father passed. So, yeah, my mom.
And how long have you been no contact with your mom?
I want to say almost 2 years now, almost two.
Okay. And what was the final straw that made you actually go no contact for the first time?
Dani, I don't know that it was like an act or an event as much as it was a realization. I was transitioning. Everything in my life was transitioning. I retired from a job. I sold my house. I was leaving the country, and I just didn't want to leave anything unsaid. I think that was what prompted me to ask my mom to have like this talk. I think so many of us, at least I did, I always hoped for this magical day where it would all be okay. We would be able to talk. We would talk openly and honestly, and we would deal with things. And when that didn't happen, I realized, okay, look, you're gonna have to move on. You got to do this. You just have to do the work. And so I don't know that it was a particular event as much as it was a declaration for myself that no, I think I've done enough. I've hoped enough. And it's time for me to take these pieces and really start to heal myself.
Yeah, that is really, really interesting to hear that that transition happened amidst a bunch of other transitions. It
Mhm.
sounds like you were elevating in general and just seeking more peace, a higher vibration, a better quality of life for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I wasn't going to be able to get it, it didn't make sense to just, to senselessly be hanging on and hoping. I felt like such a kid. It was such a replay of all that childhood stuff, those feelings of hoping and wishing. No, I just decided today is the day. Today is the day. It's enough. It's enough.
What did you do? Did you block her number? How did you
You
go
know,
about that?
I didn't have to do all of that because we hadn't really been communicating, I would say, steadily anyway. It has always been a distant kind of relationship. We had always gone in and out of contact with one another. And so it was just after that conversation we had, it was pretty clear for both of us, I think, at the end of the conversation that that was it.
Okay. Okay. How did you process that transition from connecting with her to going no contact?
It was tough, Dani. It's been a process, period, because you're never really sure until you're sure. I
Yes.
don't think when we left each other's presence that day, I didn't think, okay, that's it.
Mhm.
Although it turned out to be that was the day. Um, I don't know. I'm telling you, it really was more of I'm just I think the realization was I was never going to get what I was seeking from somebody else. I knew that day just like, when you know something, it was going to be me. I was going to have to do this healing. I had tried everything. You try to hide, you do all the things you do in relationships, in shopping, and all those other things. And I just knew it was like the cycle had to stop. I had to stop that longing and that hoping for this relationship that I knew probably wasn't going to happen. I needed to just move on for myself.
Do you remember what it was like in those first 30 days or so after going no contact?
Um, I think my situation may be unique in that I was actually leaving the country. So I went to Spain, and honestly, I'm sorry. I know that is terrible, but I was so into what I was doing that I knew I was there for a dual purpose. I knew I was there to continue this healing work because trust me, there were tearful days. There were just tearful days because I was in a foreign country by myself and I didn't know the language. That was already a stressor enough. But then I knew that I had the room and the space to process what had just happened, things that had happened over time, things that had come up in therapy. I knew I had time. But also with that, which was a great balance, was that I was in a beautiful place. I was, surrounded by castles and beaches and beautiful restaurants. So it was, I mean, if you got to do it, if you got to do that kind of personal deep work and have those teary days, you might as well have the beach as a backdrop. You might as well have a beautiful place to do it.
I quite agree. A therapeutic environment is definitely a plus while you're going through that. I think that would ease the pain and kind of
Yeah.
not work it out, but just numb it a little bit and make it easier to grapple with from day to day.
And I was away. I didn't have to explain to anybody if I was going to cry all day or if I was going to sleep all day. Whatever the day, however it unfolded, I was free to have that day. I didn't have to worry about my house. I didn't have to worry about anything. It was so perfect and I think so divine. I could never have planned that because I was initially going there to teach English and COVID hit and
Yeah.
everything went into lockdown. And suddenly I had this time and space to process what had happened, to come to terms with what that was going to look like moving forward, and to really say goodbye and mourn. I found that I really felt like I was in mourning. It wasn't, there were good days and bad days. There were long days, but I was grateful because I had almost almost 3 months of time to just kind of settle myself and then prepare to re-enter, my life again in Chicago with this new kind of boundary. So yeah, that was a good time. It was so divine. And I am so grateful. You have no idea. I'm so grateful to God that He orders our steps, Dani, because I could not have planned that. I couldn't have. I thought I was going there for a totally different purpose. And then to be gifted, ooh, it makes me a little misty. To be gifted like that, you just don't dream like that. Or, you don't know that these things can unfold. Something so painful can be handled. God works it out for you. So I'm grateful.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. Because again, we have this sort of a burden in front of us. It feels like impossible to move.
Yeah.
The thought of disconnecting, of ending that contact in that relationship, there's so much remorse. Even after I think we make that decision, it still is something we have to confront.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any sense of like longing for your mom or wanting to call? Was there any of that in that first 30 to 90 days?
No, I was pretty steadfast because I think it's been a while. We have been going through this, or at least I have been trying to process it all for myself. And what does it mean to me? How do I stand up and set a boundary that is respectful to me, and respectful to my mother at the same time? That whole equation, trying to figure it out. I had just done it long enough. I was just so tired of hoping and feeling like I was kind of working on it my own, working on it by myself.
Yeah.
Because I don't think my mother, even if she heard me talking about it, I don't think she could ever really grasp that this thing really happened the way I'm telling you it happened. This is the impact. I don't think she could ever get that. And I think when I realized that, I was like, oh hell, I'm free. Oh, okay. That's the case. I might as well go on out here and make it a beautiful day. Because if I don't, it's not gonna happen. And I'm not getting any younger, Danny. Y'all young. I'm almost 60 years old, girl. I do not have time. I promise you it was simple as that. I was like, girl, you don't got time. Tomorrow's not promised. Nobody gets a ticket to tomorrow. And so knowing that, I was like, no, no, no. If I'm retiring, I'm selling the house, I'm doing all that stuff, girl, I'm about to go kick it in the world. And I'm not taking this heavy load with me.
I
That
know.
was, I think I wrote that. I actually did. I was like, I'm just not taking it with me. It's just not worth it. I'm going to do this and then just do what I can moving forward. I'll do as much as I can moving forward with my daughter, with any, my granddaughters, whatever, my any other women or any other female relationships that I have. I'll just do the best I can moving forward.
I love it. Choosing yourself and being unapologetic about it.
Yeah.
You spoke about freedom, and lately I have been struggling when I talk to women to get them to see why that matters so much.
Oh, oh,
It's like I don't know how to sell you freedom. If you don't want that freedom for
oh,
yourself, if you are trying to decide if you ought to stay in bondage or try for freedom, I don't know what more to say other than freedom feels
it's
amazing.
almost like you have to taste it. Once you get a taste of it, I promise you, because well before I had decided to go no contact, my daughter and I took a trip to Spain, I want to say in 2018. And it was the first time I had been out of the US in a while. And to see a different pace of life, that they eat dinner later, they linger longer, they walk with their children, and it's multi-generational, and nobody's afraid of handgun violence. I got a chance, my nervous system got a chance to decompress. And I was like, oh Lord, I'm never going back. I'm never going back. What are we doing here? Everything made sense to me in that moment. But 2018, I wasn't prepared to retire, and sell the house and stuff. Fast forward, 2021 was my year. I promise you, Danny. The house closed on the 1st. I was on a plane on the 7th. I had made up my mind, but it had been a while, so I don't want to oversimplify it. It is a process. It is painful. It comes in stages. The grief comes in waves. It's an ongoing process, but I'm committed to being as healthy, happy, and whole as I possibly can be with the time I have left. Because why else do it, Danny? What
Seriously,
what what's the point?
to work and pay bills, that's not good enough at
Oh,
all.
ma'am, I'm done. Once I saw that, I was like, yep, I'm out. And so I set on a quest, honestly, just to live overseas. And
Mhm.
so hence I went back to Spain. And that second time is when I got locked down. And that was when I was able to do a lot of work.
If you had not gone no contact, do you think that you would have stepped out and started your YouTube channel and pursued a new venture in that area?
That is such a good question, because I think having survived the kind of tumult that I survived, it is always undermining your confidence. Even when you don't think that record is playing, it is playing. And that second guessing yourself, is it for me or is it for somebody else? Imposter syndrome, all of those things. My daughter asked me once, because I am a self-professed introvert. I am an introvert.
Mhm.
But she asked me, she said, you too, Danny?
Yes,
Oh
incredible.
God, yes.
Hardwired introvert.
Yep, me too. And my daughter asked me one day, she said, do you think the way you were raised made you an introvert or something to that effect? Do you think that's why you're an introvert, or do you think you would have been different had you been brought up differently? And
Mhm.
I'm not sure. I'm sure part of that has something to do with it. I think, like you said, I'm hardwired that way. I love books. I know that I need to stay in to recharge after being around peopling for so long. But some of the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, and all that, those voices you hear in your head are undoubtedly from my upbringing. And so, yeah, I don't know, had I not been able to silence those voices in real time
Mhm.
and put some distance between me and all of the gaslighting and the second guessing, I don't know that I would have done it, because I was terribly afraid to do it.
Mhm.
But it's just a season of just slaying all the fears. Because what else, The fear of heights, all of it together. It all gets treated the same by me now. It's like smack, smack, smack. All of it just gets smacked upside the head because I have to, it feels so much better. I've done it enough times now to know it feels so much better once you do it just like this, because I was scared to death even to do this. But I know that every time you go through one of those, every time you knock one down, you build this capacity to take on something else, another challenge. If nothing else, it reassures you that, oh yeah, you can do hard things. You did this, and that. So yeah, that's a part of this, one of these hard things I just need to do.
Well, again, I know we're not even halfway through, but I know, because I know where we're going with this,
Yeah.
that there are many women, especially Black women, who need to hear that I had experiences like this.
Yeah.
Not only did I live through them, but I preserved a connection with myself well enough to
Yeah.
have the wherewithal as an adult to end that cycle of abuse.
Yeah.
Even if it means sacrificing my relationship with my mother,
Yeah.
right, for the greater good of myself, of any kids I may have, the next generation, wherever I should go,
Yep.
I prevent that trauma from moving forward
Yeah.
because I'm willing to make that sacrifice. I think when we are resisting, and this is not for everybody, but when you have to go no contact, when you have to go no contact, you know it ahead of time. You
Yeah.
don't want to hear it. You don't want to know it. You don't want to accept it, but you know it.
It's almost like, please, that cannot be my reality. That can't be my reality. That's for somebody else. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the hardest part is that, yeah, this might very well be your reality, that you are going to have to be the one to pull the trigger. You're going to have to be the one to man up for yourself and for your own little girl. Oh my God. When I came to that realization, that knowledge, it was scary, Dani, but it was also so empowering. It's like, wait a minute, I got the keys. Y'all gonna give me the key? Oh, I'm gonna let her out. Oh, you gonna give me the key? Yeah, I'm going to do what it takes to make sure that I'm okay. The
Mm-hmm.
way that I wanted to be, or feel okay when I was 9, the way that I wanted to feel secured and protected when I was 12. Oh, I can do that for myself now. I
Mm-hmm.
might be a little more trigger happy now, Jenny. It's like now you come, it's like, hey, you might get it. You might get it so quick.
Yes.
It is what it is. I know I'll eventually swing back to the middle somewhere, but right now you might really get it.
That is so good. I am so glad you just said that because getting in touch with our anger is a milestone.
Yeah.
We're recovering from this kind of abuse because we are trained to have no emotional response to being mistreated. And
Yeah.
that starts at such a young age when we're first told, you better hush before I give you something to cry about. I know
Mm-hmm.
I just smacked you in the face, but don't make a face, don't drop a tear, don't flinch a muscle, just take it, right?
That cycle.
We're taught in that moment to
Yeah.
separate from our inner child, separate from our human experience, and deny our own truth in that moment.
Yeah.
And so when we grow up with that conditioning, it can be so difficult as an adult to tell yourself the truth, to see that truth about your parent,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're close, especially if it's not black and white, because a lot of times the dynamic is not all one thing or the other.
Yeah.
So sorting out the good from the bad and recognizing that you deserve better, I
Mm-hmm.
think for some is nearly impossible, at least without help, without support, without community, which is why
Yeah.
hearing stories like this is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So let's see. Mm, okay, would you describe your parent as abusive? And if yes, did you know you were being abused while it was happening?
I would absolutely say yes. And Dani, whenever I address this, it's so hard for me to see it in isolation. And I know I should sit there with that for a moment, but I can't help but see, because I am a mother, I see that whole generational thing, how we just pass that thing down, down, down. Because if it weren't for therapy, I had 2 kids too. I raised kids. It gave me such a compassion for this whole cycle of generational trauma and being able to call it what it is. It was abuse. Whether you realize it or not, it has been, it has been put on me. I have perpetuated it. I had to get in touch with that. That is a tough girl. That is some reckoning. That first of all, this has happened to me. The knowledge that it has probably happened to my mother, that I have probably visited it on my daughter, until we can look at that for real, and be like, wait a minute, this has to stop. It has to stop. Somebody has to call it what it is. Somebody has to have the courage to stand up and say, okay, no, we're not going to do it anymore. You have to do the work. It's just, I just wish I could say there was a magic pill. There isn't. And every day hasn't been easy for me, but the days are always brighter, if that makes any sense, because I know what I'm doing for myself. I'm standing up for myself. I am setting those boundaries. I am demanding more from the people around me. I am showing up differently for the people who are in my life, because now I have I've acknowledged that that terrible thing did happen. Yep, it was abuse. Sorry, mama and them didn't see it that way, because it probably happened to them. So they didn't see it that way. And even trying to explain it, they don't get it. I don't know. And it isn't important to me that you get it. I get it. I understand what happened. You don't ever have to get it. I think releasing myself from that apology. I don't ever need your apology either. I don't need your acknowledgement. I don't need that stuff. What I need is space. I need people around me who respect what I say and respect that boundary. And if not, you just gonna see these deuces. I'm gonna chuck them every time because I'm quick, Dani. I'm quick. I'm telling you. I eventually I hope to kind of, I don't know. I'm loving where it is, Dani. I'm quick. If I sense it, it's like, no, I'm good. Gaslighting, oh no, you don't get an opportunity to do that with me anymore. I know I've had a lifetime of that. I know what that is. And so I don't second guess myself anymore.
Okay, now you don't second guess yourself anymore. Somebody who doesn't know what it's like to have your sense of self, your very sense of reality hijacked by another person
Mm.
might not understand what a triumph that is, that you don't second guess yourself anymore.
Yeah, it
Hear
sounds
your own voice
simple.
and just follow through with no doubt, no questioning, right? No inner conflict, because you
Yeah,
healed it between you and your inner child. Y'all are on the same
yeah,
page. She's in her position and you are in yours, and
yeah,
you're functioning.
yeah. She trusts that I'm going to listen to that intuitive feeling. We all have it, but
Yes.
I think because you've been told to hush and not cry and deny and gaslight, it gets so confusing. But once I know, when I feel something, Dani, that I know what I know. I don't need you to tell me anything. And so being able to honor that, I think doing that consistently has helped my little girl trust me. She's like, oh yeah, mama, I have her. I don't need anybody to step in. I'm going to step in. And so I'm doing that more consistently. I still don't like conflict. I don't know if that will ever go away. I prefer peace over conflict. But if you insist on a conflict, I will try to calm my PTSD enough to treat you and tell you that that's not going to work for me, because you might catch it. The way my PTSD is wired, you might catch it first, and then I might have to come back and soften it up. But yeah, that ability to trust your intuition, to act in your own best interest and do that consistently has been the best medicine. I call my little girl Niecy. Everybody knows little Niecy. And that's how I protect her, by being consistent and having those hard conversations that I don't like to have. And I don't do it always, but I'm getting better at doing it.
Were you ever timid? Were you ever like afraid to speak up or protect yourself?
Always, still now. Some days I still struggle. I just worked with financial professional who I was paying, who was so rude. I was like, it took me aback. I felt like that same little girl until finally I just looked at her and I said, you look so unhappy. You just don't look happy. Just enough for her to see that this is not okay. This is not okay. I probably would have never done that. I probably would have been the good girl, been polite, just, I don't know, grin and bear it. Let's just get this over with, pay this woman and get out. But no, now I find myself, even if I'm not yelling, I don't have to yell. I don't always have to, it doesn't have to be a ferocious. It
Mhm,
could be a very gentle, just reminder that I don't like what's happening now. I don't
mhm.
like the way you're making me feel. Even that's powerful. I didn't see that as powerful before. I thought it had to be a rah rah. It
Right.
doesn't have to be a rah rah. It could be a quiet reminder that no,
Absolutely.
I'm leaving. I'm gonna leave this. I'm gonna leave you with this.
Yes, and that is so accurate. When we go through, I think it's like a roller coaster when we are learning to get in touch with our anger, because at first it's a little bit out of control, like a little bit unpredictable. We don't really know
Mm-hmm.
how to work the controls on our anger because we've
Mm-hmm.
inherited that anger late in life.
Yeah.
But after a while, once you understand that you're safe and that you are going to protect yourself when necessary, you can calm down, right? You can be more measured in your
Yeah.
interactions with people because you feel safer. You're more confident that you can face this confrontation and come out on the other side because you've already been through so many other
Yeah.
confrontations. This is nothing, right?
Yeah.
At this point. But can you talk about what does it cost you when you would have just sat there and let this person disrespect or mistreat you, however mildly or severe it may have been, when you just stay quiet and internalize it, what did that cost you?
The cost before would be there would be so much self-talk afterwards, like, oh, I should have said, or oh, I wish I had done this. So much regret. But once you get a handle on that and you start to assert and advocate for yourself and just start setting boundaries. Girl, I don't know. I think I've lost on that side too, but in a positive way. I lose people who mean me no good. I lose them very quickly. And I'm not sad about that. It looks different. I'm sure there are people around me who I'm sure it may seem abrupt. It
Mhm.
can even seem rude. It can seem all kinds of things it might seem to them. And Danny, quite frankly, I just don't care. I don't care about that anymore because the people who really know me, like the people who really sit and get to know me, they know me. They know my story. They could probably tell you, well, that's why she let you go because you was gossiping. I don't want to hear that. Those kinds of spirits, anything that reminds me that's a trigger, of what it was like growing up. I don't want to hear. There's certain things that trigger me. And if you bring that into the atmosphere, I'm not going to be able to sit with you. And I'm not going to do a lot of explaining. I would have explained and cajoled and tried to soft shoe around it. I don't do it anymore. Now it's just like, yep, nope, that's a no for me. This is
Yep.
not an energetic match. Nope, sorry, it's not gonna work. And,
Yes.
and no, I'm not going to explain. I
Right,
said all I have to say about it.
right,
I would
right.
have never done that. I would have never done that. Oh my gosh. I would have allowed those people in my space to make me uncomfortable. I don't know. I would have tried to work around it. And sometimes I still catch myself that, I'm always measuring. It's like, is this somebody who leaves me feeling better? Or is this someone who leaves me feeling depleted or put upon? And so, yeah, I try to make those cuts really quickly just for my own sanity's sake.
Yes. That's so good. And with the being in touch with your anger, I think is difficult for any victim of this kind of abuse. I think
Mm-hmm.
especially for women, because women in general are conditioned to be quiet, be seen and not heard, to be timid and gentle, but we're conditioned to be these people pleasers.
Yep.
And that's a coping mechanism because we learn to do that when we're trying to keep peace in a house that's not safe. Let me
Yep.
just anticipate your every mood and be overly cooperative, right?
Yep.
On my own boundaries and sensitivity
Yep.
to try to keep you calm so I can stay safe. That's how that
Yep.
works.
Yep.
But for Black women, we are the scapegoat of the world, right? Because we're
Tell it.
and woman, so we're the most likely to be exposed to trauma in our childhood, to abuse of any variety. But at the
Yep.
time, we are the women who are stereotyped as angry, as aggressive, as masculine, right, as uncooperative, difficult to get along with.
Yeah.
It takes so much courage as a Black woman to stand firmly in your space and in your voice and be quick to tell somebody when they disrespect you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because,
Because you will get tagged with the angry Black woman so quickly. And
yes,
it's sad. Yeah. We're the least protected, but the first to be labeled angry and aggressive and all those things. It's just insane.
yes, but we have to protect ourselves.
Hmm.
We have to protect ourselves. Our inner
Yeah.
children are counting on us. And
Yeah.
that little girl within has nobody else to count on but you.
Yeah.
So you have to show up for her.
Yeah. I love doing it though now, Danny. I promise you. It's the same thing. I liken it to what you would do for your children. I have two kids, and I know no matter what, I can think of so many incidents when I may have thought that they were in danger, and how you don't even think twice about doing something dangerous. You don't think twice about doing something that people might find objectionable. But I was never that quick to protect myself in that way. And so being able to do it now, I like it. It's like practice. Girl, I practice. I wish, what was
Yes.
it my Max said? I wish you would. I wish somebody would. So you don't want to walk around with that chip on your shoulder, but I am of my mindset is such now that I recognize it. I know when that's happening, particularly gaslighting. That's one of my real triggers. If you start gaslighting, oh my goodness, it's like everything in my body goes pop, 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 pop. Yep, yep, yep. It's going down. It's going down. And so, yeah, I'm on alert. But I think the goal is to just have balance, just to be aware and be willing to protect yourself, be willing to set that boundary, honor it without being overly, I don't want to be like just this trigger hair
Right,
that you are just popping off at everything.
right, right. Again, peace over conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, you have to stay ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, do you ever regret going no contact?
I wouldn't say I regret it. I think anybody, I don't know, maybe it's still some place in me that needs to be healed. I wish it could have been another way. Of course, I wish it could have been another way, but it wasn't. I think that what I have learned is a term that I call, it's just you got to really deal with what's here. It's some hardcore facts. These are facts, and you just gonna have to deal with it. It's the reality. It's no, you can't cover your eyes. You can't wish it away. It is what it is. Do I wish it could have been another way? Of course. I don't think anybody wakes up wanting to be out of contact with your parent, but it is what it is. And so, yeah, I just have had to deal with that. That's the reality. And so I don't regret it. I wish the outcome could have been different, but this is the outcome that it is. I accept it. It's radical acceptance. I just radically accept that this is what it is. And then I'm moving on. So you just gotta move forward. You can't cry forever. Just can't.
Yeah, right. That's why you show up to cry and do the work so you can get over it and move on.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important part of why we actually go no contact. There has to be some motivation for
Mhm.
something outside for a better life. If you're complacent with whatever you have, including that relationship, there's nothing there to motivate you to make that drastic and difficult and painful of a change.
Yeah.
But if you feel that you have this call on your life, right? If you're one of these women who are praying about generational wealth and healing and entering the
Yeah.
promised land and having this soft life and this luxury that Black women traditionally have not been accustomed to, then it's like the fine print on that is you're going to have to give up some things. And that relationship with your mom is one of them,
You're
unfortunately.
gonna have to do the work to embrace all that in truth and in spirit. I mean, everybody can splash something on Instagram. You can make it look like something, but nobody is there with you when you are there by yourself. You must, I mean, to have all that beauty and be in all those beautiful spaces and not be at peace. Or who are we kidding? At the end of the day, you are left alone with yourself. And I wanted to give myself the best possible chance to enjoy the fruits of my labor. I worked. I don't care what nobody say, Danny. Like most Black women, I started working when I was 14. What? You have got to be kidding me. You think I'm going to do all of that to get to the end, to be unhappy? Oh no, I was reading the books, Danny. I was reading the books. I was doing the work. I went to therapy. I did all the stuff. And so, yes, I'm here to cash in. I want it. I want to be happy. I want to smile. I don't want to be snapping on people. I want to be my best self moving forward. I want to see my children do well. I want to perpetuate and pour healing into them, ask for forgiveness. I want to do all that stuff. It's work though, and not everybody wants to do that work, but if you do it, I promise you, the benefit on the other side is that you can sit at peace. I'm at peace. It doesn't matter what room I walk into. I can start out shaky because I'm an introvert, but I can find my space and my footing in just about any room because I'm okay. I get it now. She's okay. And when even when that little girl feels out of place or on edge or discombobulated or whatever it is, out of sorts, I know how to settle. I know how to get in tune and listen and settle that so that, I can be okay. I don't need anybody else to help me do that.
I hear confidence, I hear self-respect, I hear clarity, all the things that we lack when we are being abused.
That gaslighting have you toe up.
And
Yeah.
is an entire matrix.
Mm-hmm.
It looks so different on
Yeah.
the other side of that.
I had to disconnect. And I think someone said, and I don't know who it was, said, well, why do you have to leave to heal? I had to leave to heal, but I will tell you this, it sure felt good being in the Mexican Caribbean. That didn't hurt. Being able to spot or go to these, go to places and disconnect, have a slower pace,
Yeah.
just an easier way of life. When I think of soft life and ease, I don't think of Gucci and, high-end products but that's not it for me. What works for me is being able to afford to go to the spa when I need to go, being able to walk in a park because I need to be outdoors. I know this about myself. Being able to afford an apartment with a terrace because I need sunlight. That's soft life for me. It's not full of stuff. I used to have tons of shoes and handbags. Girl, I don't want none of it. You can have it all. I
Right.
would much rather have a quiet apartment somewhere that's beautiful, that feeds my soul. I wake up in the morning, I'm glad to get out of bed. I have the time, that I'm not driven by an alarm clock. So yeah, that's the reward, I think, for doing the work.
Yeah, I agree. What do you say to the person who says, well, you could have all of that stuff and still be in contact with your mother? Why are they mutually exclusive?
I say, well, if you could have, then you should have by now. That I don't believe that. I think if you can, then you should do that. If you can have that relationship and still be at peace with yourself and still have boundaries that are respectful of everybody in that relationship and you leave feeling fed and nourished. If that's happening for you, then there's no need for you to go zero contact. But if that is not happening with you, I don't see how you can be silent and complicit in that and still they don't go together for me because I can't then be I can't be myself. I feel like I betrayed myself in some way. If I would allow a man to mistreat me, if I would allow a boss to mistreat me, if I would allow anybody to mistreat me, and I've had all of the above happen in stages, it doesn't feel good. And I never felt, I always knew something was out of sort and something was out of pocket and I needed to make some adjustments. So I don't know that for everybody they have to be mutually exclusive. I don't know how that works. But for me, I could not endure that kind of disrespect or disregard and still feel good about myself. No. No, it's like being bullied. It's like get beat up on the playground every day at noon. How you gonna enjoy school getting beat up every day? No, it doesn't work. I mean, I think you're kidding yourself. And maybe it's easier to just kind of go along to get along, but ultimately, no, that wasn't gonna work for me.
Mhm. It's the abuse for me. That's the
Mhm.
right there. Because I can't make an effort to like drink more water and go to bed on time and eat whole foods and go to yoga, but then show up to be your
Yes.
because I'm obligated like that. How can it work together?
mentally you can never be at peace with that, which means, and I don't know about you, but when mentally I'm not at peace, everything else is a little off. Physically, I'm not doing everything that I have not maximized. And I'm not saying it's a tough thing, I think, to keep all the plates spinning. You're operating optimally physically, you're operating optimally mentally and emotionally. I mean, that's great, sis. If you can manage that, that's great. But for me, at any given time, I'm at a particular place in either one. I can be really on top of the physical thing, and then I'm on top of my spiritual thing, but then maybe mentally I'm somewhere else. So just that work, being able to have the space, Dani, to not be looking over your shoulder, having somebody talking the silence and the space, that is freedom. And if you haven't experienced that, I can't sell it to you. All I can tell you is it feels so much better. It feels so much better. That is really freedom, because your energy, your spirit is free. Your time is free. Girl, it's good. Get some. It's like that Bible verse that says, "Oh, taste and see." You know, if you had a delicious piece of fruit, Dani, and you want to share, you're like, "Girl, get these bananas and these grapes. It's delicious." That's
Mhm.
how I feel about this. It's like, girl, go get this healing. I promise you, it's hard work. It's not over for me. I'm still in it. I'm still learning every day. I still sometimes grieve. I still sometimes cry. Like, well, why? But it is what it is. Now my why is totally different. But yeah, but it's so totally worth it.
That's so true, because if you offer a delicious piece of fruit to somebody who doesn't eat fruit, like, ooh, taste this date, taste this mango. You're like, I don't really want that. What is that? I don't want that. But it's better. It's
Yeah.
better than the counterfeit.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, so this is the question that I have been looking forward to,
Yeah.
because there are two things that come to mind when I think about your story that I think are so uh, quintessential of what it looks like to experience this abuse in childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So, will you tell us what is a key example of how your mother would abuse you?
I don't think my mother was, first of all, she was very young. And I don't think she was aware of the power of her words or the power of just her presence. And I think the gaslighting for me, it is when I know I saw something and I know what I know, to have somebody look you right in the face and tell you, oh no, that's not it. That, along with just that, any opportunity to say something not affirming, oh, if somebody's gonna be sick, you'll be the one, that constantly having to defend and saying, no, 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 because I've never been that person where you could visit that kind of foolishness and I wouldn't respond. I would always respond to that. But even that, just having to do that, having to be on guard, having to, you know, be ready to protect yourself from an insult or, masked as a joke. Oh God, no. Tiresome, tiresome, tiresome. So that kind of for me, that's mental abuse. And I promise you, if you quiz 25 Black women over 70, they would be like, that's not abuse.
Right.
It is. It absolutely is. Anything that leaves you second guessing and undermining your own self, your own thoughts, and that, it is. It's abuse. It isn't there. You don't have scars, you don't have a black eye, but you still are left damaged. And I think that's what my mother and so many women in that generation, they didn't get. I'm sure that they were probably victimized in that way, because where else do you learn that?
Right. Right. We learn to, right, because when we're children and we are mistreated, neglected, abused in any facet by our parent, we find a way to understand that it's our fault because we're not good.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that our psyche is ready to accept at that time. We're
Mm-hmm.
not ready to process that mom or dad or whoever is less than perfect, because we need
Yeah.
them to be that at the time.
Yeah.
I think this is a perfect example of that. Will you tell us? I think it was your first day of school or maybe kindergarten.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I'm telling you, even as I play it back now, I can smile, Danny. That's how I know I have moved along because it used to make me cry to tell this story. But yeah, the first day of kindergarten, I've always been pretty independent. I had a younger sister, and I can remember helping make her bottles, just always wanting to be involved and take charge. But it was the first day of kindergarten, and I was the last kid left on the playground. And so one of the teachers peeked out the window, and I knew, like, almost instinctively to cover. I went and jumped on one of the things and started playing on, it was like a seesaw, and I'm playing on it and bouncing on it because I know I shouldn't be out here alone. And so she yells, like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm playing. I'm going home in a little bit, is what I told her, knowing that that was not the truth. I was really still waiting for my mom to pick me up. Well, she didn't come. And so I started walking. I I don't remember how I knew. I knew I was walking to my grandmother's house, which wasn't far. And I probably had just counted the blocks as we were coming when I walked and just found my way back. Girl, did I cry? Yes, I cried every step of the way. It was scary. It was really, and Dani, to be honest with you, when I remember it, even more so than scary, I was so embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I was the last one. I was embarrassed that I had to make up this story to the teacher. And then I had to then the fear of trying to feel your way home, and then the fear of, am I going to get in trouble because I made this executive decision to leave the playground? All of those things. And then finally, the relief of seeing my block. It's like I could relive that, that whole thing as if it were yesterday, because it was one of the first times when I realized, oh, shoot, you might have to fend for yourself, kid. You, you may very well have to grow up. And, that whole thing was, yeah, that's something. I think in the worst part is me telling my mother about it, like the retelling of it, and her saying to me, "Oh, well, you cried the whole way." And I'm thinking to myself, I was 5. A 5-year-old should have cried. They should have cried and screamed bloody murder. Somebody should have picked me up, is what should have happened. But none of that stuff happened. Or to have my mother say that, oh, it was a different time then. It was the 70s. I think you're missing the point. The point is the task was beyond the child and the development. That should have never happened. Even if in the 70s they weren't snatching little kids up, which I'm pretty sure they were. But even, to have all of that, to have, one, the lack of an acknowledgement that this should not have happened, then to be hit with the, well, you cried the whole way, then to, oh, it was a different time, everything but I'm sorry, everything but, oh my goodness, I could not imagine. Because I promise you, if I walked out of here today and I saw a 5-year-old crying, walking, girl, I'm calling the police. What are you talking about? We're going to surround this baby and we're going to call the police, because that should not happen. So to have that whole thing like, oh, and you still talking about it 60 years later, it has nothing to do with the time. It has to do with that. This is the reality. These kinds of things happen. Those things do impact your development. They do impact how you feel safe. They do impact your impression and your style of attachment. All of these are just realities. And so these are conversations I have not been able to have directly with my mother. This is stuff that's why you have therapy. You just have to do the work. So yeah, that was a tough one. That was one of the first times I knew it was like, yep,
Mm-hmm.
you gonna be taking care of yourself.
Oh, thank you. So that was kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
How far do we fast forward until, let's see, it was the story of the break-in?
Oh gosh, Dani, that was girl, that's the kind of thing I think we all look back and say, you survived that, a kid survived that. My father was addicted to drugs, and I think he was an IV drug abuser, just out there, just really involved. And he had done something to a man. I don't know. It had something to do with some laundry or something, just, whatever comes with that lifestyle. And the man came to our house. It was very early in the morning, like 5 o'clock in the morning. And just from living in the world, I know 5 o'clock in the morning, this is not a good sign. And I'm the first person besides my father to hear the door. I heard it first. I heard the man knock. I heard my father wake up to go answer the door. And the man broke in and stabbed him. And I don't know if he was trying to kill him or not. I just know that it was violent. It was bloody. It was terrible. It was traumatic. It was all of that. It's just one of those really horrific things that you just can't even imagine a kid going through. Time freezes. It felt like that day, that those moments lasted forever and ever. And being left alone again, you know what I'm saying? To have to figure out, how do I get out of this safely? When does this event end? When is it going to end? Not knowing your own fate. You know, that was a page turner, to be honest with you. It was, for me, being left in that situation, because my father ran out, my mother ran out. Being there, just knowing and hearing and knowing that you are alone with this situation. There is no adult here. That part, you just don't forget that. You know what I'm saying, Dani? That doesn't leave you. The fear, the how I responded to that, my response to the fear was, I went to hide. It wasn't like I wanted to fight back. And so even that, watching how sometimes I still respond to fear. My first instinct isn't to necessarily always fight back. It's to fawn sometimes, because I'm just frozen. And it was tough. That was a tough one, Dani. So it just reinforced for me again, girl, you gonna have to fend for yourself.
Mhm. So again, if it's too much, if you need to back off and go in a different direction, just let me know.
Yeah.
Um, but after he initially broke in and violence occurred, what
Mm-hmm.
were the pieces that transpired in the middle? Because at some point you were left alone with this person.
Yes. It was me and my sister. I had my younger sister, and either he re-entered the apartment or he never left. And he grabbed me out of the bed and dragged me up the hallway into the outer hallway. We had a long hall, and dragged me to the outer hallway. And with the same knife that he stabbed my father, he put the knife to my neck and said to me, I ought to rape you. I think I was 9 or 10. And I can just remember, Dani, because my grandmother really was so instrumental in my upbringing. As far back as I can remember, she was always there. My grandmother was a pastor, and we went to church. Girl, I thought everybody went to church 4 days a week. I did not know, because my grandmother, from the time I was 5, I was baptized at 5. And so she always had given me this presence of faith. So even in that moment, Dani, the only thing I could think to do, because I certainly was powerless, I knew I was powerless, there was nothing I could do, was I just began to pray. I began to pray, and I began to tell him, I go to church every Sunday. I sing in the choir. Oh, it is such a relief to be able to tell it, Dani, and not emote the way I used to. I know that enough distance has occurred between me and that. It's still emotional for me. It's still like it happened yesterday, but I don't emote all over the place anymore. I can actually get through telling it. It was that whole process of begging, for your life, coming face to face with, you don't know. I did not know what this man was going to do. I had no clue what he was going to do. But I knew enough to pray. My grandmother had given me that, girl. I could not imagine. My grandmother could have taught me anything. She could have taught us to hucklebuck, boogaloo. She could have taught us anything. But what she taught me to do was to pray, girl. She taught me to believe. That's the part that gets me. It's not even the incident. It's the faith. It's the What if I had not had that grandmother? What if I didn't have enough sense to pray? I could have offered him oral sex. I could have said anything. My grandmother could have taught us the hook hole. She could have taught us any of that, but she didn't. She told us to pray. And Dani, I promise you, in that moment, someone opened the door in one of the other apartments and the man ran away. And from there, I ran back into the apartment and ran and hid in a closet. Some of that, I had to really rely on my mother to help reconstruct, because to be honest with you, I blacked out. I do not remember. I just remember somebody opening the door. I remember him running away. I don't remember how I got back into the house. I don't remember any of those details. And when I talked to my mother, she did fill that part in for me, because I'm sure, just to protect myself, when he left, I was so relieved. It was one of the toughest days. I wouldn't wish it on anybody to have lived through it, and then to be in a family system where you don't talk about anything. There's no talking about it. We never spoke of it from that day forward. I don't know that I ever shared it with my grandmother, anybody in my family. I don't know how it got communicated to me, but it was communicated to me, obviously, very clearly, that this was never to be spoken of. And I never did. I don't think from that day to this, my mother ever asked me, how are you? I don't, there's no therapy. Today, we would wrap so much care around a child who had survived something like that. We would make sure that there was therapy, or that, we would make sure that they received some services. There was nothing like that. As a matter of fact, I don't know how it was communicated to me, but I know we never spoke of it again. And even at the mention of it years later, decades later, my mother's response would be, "Why are you bringing that up?" And I'm saying, it's not for you. I have to bring it up for me. I have to actually acknowledge that this is what happened to me. This is for real. It happened. I'm so sorry that for any adult or anybody that was involved, if y'all can't deal with it, you can't face it. I have to, because to not deal with it, it just fed into all of the other dysfunction. And so when I began to go to therapy, you have to deal with all of it. You just got to dig it up. You got to look at it, label it, call it what it is, and deal with it. And so, yeah, that was one of those times, Dani. Again, I felt very much alone, and I very much felt like I had to figure it out. And so, yeah, that became a recurring thing.
Yeah. And so we can bring that full circle. How did you go from being in the apartment with your sister and your parents to being alone with this person?
They
Where
ran
was your
out.
mother? Where was she while this was happening?
Oh, they both ran out of the apartment. They left us in the apartment. Me and my sister, we were in the apartment. They left. My father ran out first, and I'm not sure if the dude ran after him, and then my mother ran out last. And so I'm not sure if the man re-entered the place or he would never left. I don't know. I just know he appeared out of almost like nowhere and snatched me up out the bed.
Yeah. So you,
It was that act of the two adults leaving us, which is, it's like, wow. Because, but you know what, Dani, I am a parent, and you never know how you're going to respond. But I've been in some really tough situations with my kids, nothing like that. But I've had other kids, try to bully my kids. I've had all kinds of things. A woman in a shopping center acting up, and I felt like my kids were in danger. And my instinct is always to protect them, always, without even thinking, is to, oh my God, it's almost like not thinking. I can remember my son having to, like hold me back, because I'm like, wait a minute, no, 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 no. You don't talk to these two. So that part, trying to reconcile, even being a mother myself, trying to reconcile, like, how could somebody do that? Wasn't your first instinct to run to us? That wasn't your first instinct. So asking all those questions, you could go down a rabbit hole. You could do yourself in. Again, for me, radical acceptance. This is what happened, ma'am. This is what happened. And in therapy, I think you get a chance to work all that stuff out. This is what happened. You could wish away. You wish ahead and wish could. No, no, no. At the end of the day, this is what happened. This is the reality. This is what you have to deal with. How do you process this? What are you going to do with it? Just looking back, how did it affect me as a young girl, following through and looking at how it affected me even up until adulthood. Just being able to do all that work, I promise you, Dani, it's hard. Nobody wants to, it's not like your first instinct is to wake up in the morning, let me go dig up this trauma. Let me go deal with this trauma. But I promise you, it's like getting your insides a good scrubby. It's a good scrubbing out. It is so worth the tears. It's so worth the reliving it, retelling it, even when people don't want you to retell it. It is so worth standing up and saying, nope, you don't get to tell me to shut up this time. It is worth it for your own. I'm telling you, I just can't explain that weight off of my chest. It's like, because if you can do that, you can do anything. If you could do that work, you can do anything. You really, at least that's the way I feel. If I could come through that, live through it, hold on to that, survive and function, and then finally at this late date, roll it all out, clean it all up. I deserve to smile. I deserve to be happy. I deserve to clear out all of that junk, whether you want to help me or not. I do it for me. I go back and retell it. Yep. One of the hardest things with you and I are working together is for me to journal it and write it down. It's like, oh my goodness. But the value in it is that now, honestly, I think when we first started working together, I couldn't even talk about it without crying. And now I can at least tell it. I can tell it now. It's like, yeah, that happened. That really did. And I feel for that little girl in a way that makes me want to, I can do it now. I can do what should have been done for her. I do that for her now. Nobody gets to talk to her any kind of way. Nobody gets to treat her any kind of way. You don't get to abandon her. And you don't get to do those things and still stay in relationship with me. You don't get to do those things and then tell me be quiet or we have this silent pact. I don't do that. I don't do that anymore. I don't betray myself in that way. So yeah, it's worth the work. It's hard, but girl, every tear in hindsight was worth it. Every tear is still worth it. I don't know that you ever like get to a place where you put a period in it, like done, lick that. I don't know that happens. I just know that it gets easier. It is getting easier for me day by day, and I'm still learning.
Sorry. That is spot on. It gets easier.
Yeah.
And it's so worth it. The freedom.
Yep.
The peace. The trust within the relationship with yourself makes everything so much easier.
Yep.
It allows you to be emotionally available to show up to your life, to who you really want to be. And now when you create that space, you remove your abuser. Now there is space for you to pursue your hobbies, your likes, to explore something new, to develop yourself in a way that you were not free to do before because all that energy had to go towards protecting yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Did you attract other abusers into your life as a result of your dynamic with your mother?
I would say absolutely. And the funny part about it is just like I didn't know or I wouldn't have labeled what was happening, that dynamic, the dysfunction between my mother and myself, what was happening in my house. I wouldn't have labeled it abuse. When it showed up in other areas of my life, in the workplace, when it showed up in my relationships, I didn't label that abuse either because there were no bruises. Nobody was punching me in my face, but it was the same kind of manipulation. It was the same kind of scapegoating. It was all this mental trash that I did not see as mental trash. I did not see it as dysfunction. I didn't see it as dysfunctional as it was. I knew it was off and I knew it wasn't peaceful, but I felt like I could endure it. And I would, as a young woman, I would tell myself I have a high tolerance for pain. Girl, that's not good. That's no badge of honor to be wearing. But because I had been through so much, I had kind of conditioned myself that it doesn't have to be perfect for me to get this work done. I can work around this. This ain't that bad. No, some of those situations I should have been out of way sooner. Work relationships, the same. I've worked in toxic work environments and I should have left. So, should have never endured all that kind of crazy. But when you don't know, you don't know. And I think that's one of the things I would want women, if you find yourself in this space, that it is okay, you know, to even call it abuse. I think there's some shame that rides with that. Nobody wants to feel like you weren't able to protect yourself and you were abused. Nobody wants to be the abused.
Absolutely.
But if you could just be okay with, it's not your fault. You know what I'm saying? You will be okay if you look at it and call it what it is. You can be okay on the backside of it once you look at it and go in there and do that work and look at how it has affected you and how you present today. If you do all of that, it is worth it is worth looking at. It is so worth facing those demons, those dragons, those scary things, those unspoken conversations. I'm telling you, it is a process and it has taken me many years, but I wouldn't do it any differently. I mean, if anything, I wish I had known more sooner because nobody talked about this, Dani. There was no Dani talking to gone, no contact. That was not a thing. And so for me, just the concept, when I heard this, I was like, what? Black people can go no contact? Oh my, that's a thing. Oh my God, representation is everything, Dani. So thank you. I thank you for that. I didn't have that knowledge. I didn't have that language. So to have a sister who looks like me saying, yeah, this happened, girl, that happened. It's like it meant everything because I was like, oh my God, I'm not crazy. It did happen. It did absolutely go down the way I said. There's a name for it. You can do this. You can make this choice. Dani, I'm sorry. Once I found out that was a choice, I was like, oh heck yeah, that's the choice for me. I'm sorry. That's it. And I don't want it to sound any kind of way because it's not something that you enter into glibly. But I promise you, once I knew it was a thing, I was like, yeah, I'm probably gonna be that. I'll probably be doing that because I'm gonna need that peace. I'm gonna need that. And if this is how I can get to it, I'm gonna have to do that because the other way isn't working. It's not working. So
Yes.
thank you, sister.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that and just for sharing because we empower one another. And I was motivated to step out in this light initially because I knew, oh, I know it's other Black women going through the same thing. They think it's all their fault.
Yep.
They can't find the door out of it.
Yep.
And you stay stuck. So
Yep.
to give that permission, not that anybody needs permission, but like, hello, yes, there are Black women who do this.
Yes.
It's a thing now. We go no contact from abusers. It's not even about your mother.
No.
It's not about your father. It's about Black women have enough respect for themselves to go no contact with abusers, period. And there
Period.
shouldn't be a question because nobody's
Period.
telling Tina to run back to Ike because it's been a while. Like, don't tell
Yep.
me that I should reconnect with my abuser because she is my mother.
Mm-mm. I mean, in the workplace, cut it. I mean, in friendships, cut it. I
Yes.
don't care where it shows up. Disrespect and a disregard for my desire, my wishes, and my well-being cannot exist in the same space with me when I'm happy. You can't stay here. And it's I don't know. It's like this really new, I hate to describe it this way, Dani, but for me it feels like a sword. And it's like the easiest cut now. It's no longer that having to pull apart and that jagged heartbreak. I don't do that anymore. It's like as soon as it shows up, if you are a gaslighter, you got one or two times. If I feel like you're doing that, oh no, I'm good. And I'm not going to explain. I stopped explaining. Black women, stop explaining. We do not owe anybody an explanation. You don't. You can give it to them. I offer it sometimes. It depends. But most times, no, I don't. I really don't. And I've had some, feedback. Hey, you're gonna have to deal with it. If you want to be around me, it's certain things I just don't like. There's certain things that trigger. And gossipy women, backbiting, all those things that remind me of the dysfunction I saw or what I was familiar with, wherever I saw it, I don't want it around me. I'm trying to be better, and I can't be better if you're bringing that.
Right.
I say I reserve that space for women who are doing better than me, because
Right.
I want her in my space. I'm trying to do what she's doing. I'm not trying to do that. I just don't want it. So the cuts are quick. They are quick,
Yeah.
and I don't apologize for it anymore. It
Yeah.
is what it is.
Yep. Once you learn to let go of what's familiar and stop being scared to let it go and to reach for something better,
Yes.
it's easier. It
Yes,
becomes,
love, peace,
yes.
all that stuff, beautiful lights and flowers, y'all. Bring all that stuff. But
Right.
anything other than that, no, ma'am, I'm not here for it. I don't want it in my friendships. I don't want it in my workplace. I don't want it in my mate. I don't want it in my family, relationships. No, I say no. I'm good. I don't care if it's just two. Danny, I'll take two peaceful friends.
Right.
I'll take a half a peaceful friend. But the rest of it, no, ma'am, I don't want it.
Yep. It will be better to be alone. And I
Yeah.
think that resistance that we have around identifying as a victim keeps us stuck. It
Mm-hmm.
prevents us from getting to this place because if you're not willing to take a hard look at it and
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge that you are a victim.
Baby, you gonna keep spinning your wheels. You'll keep coming back to it though, Danny. That's what I have found. That even though I had been in therapy, girl, for years, but it felt like I was just tipping up to it, just tipping up to it, tipping up to it. You do a little bit of work, and it's like, okay, I'm tired. And you stop the work but you always come back to it. I always wound up coming back to the work because those same situations would present themselves, whether it was the same dynamic in the workplace, if I wasn't dealing with it there. I mean, for many years, my workplace was just peaceful. And then the same thing, the same dynamic presented itself there. You're going to deal with it one way or the other. You're going to learn to deal with it or it will keep presenting itself.
That
And
right
I think the
there.
sooner you hit it, you can save yourself. I just think, and I don't have any regrets about the way it unfolded. But I just wonder, like, well, if I had made these discoveries in my 20s, my 30s, my 40s. But I'm okay with the way it is because it's all to the good, Danny. It's all good. I get all this good now, girl. I don't have no kids. I ain't got nothing to worry about. Now I get to suck it all up for myself. So it's all good.
Yes, it warms my heart to know you are somewhere having a drink, enjoying a sunset on somebody's beach, having a good time because you deserve it.
Girl, as soon as I get out of Chicago is so cold. I'm sorry, y'all. I didn't mean to break, but it is so cold here. I hate it. I cannot wait to get on a plane to find someplace warm to be. So yeah, that's how I take care of myself. Is I can't stay here. I know what I want. I know what I don't like. And now I just go do what suits me, what makes me happy.
Yes. What is your next destination?
Actually, I'm booked to go to Vietnam on the 15th. Y'all pray with me and cross your fingers because I'm waiting on my visa to be approved. And so as soon as my visa is approved, oh, is that Danny, are you there?
Mhm.
That's my grand boy.
Oh, wait, did you lose me? Are you still here?
I'm still here. Can you see me? Can we
Yes, I
see
can
each
still,
other?
still hear and see you.
Okay. Sorry about that. That was my grandson calling for our daily video game chat.
Not at all. You were saying you're waiting for your visa?
Yeah, as soon as my visa is approved, everything else is booked. So I hit Vietnam, and hopefully my real goal is to get to Thailand and then Bali. So just do Southeast Asia. Y'all pray for me seriously because this has really been. I have a little fear. I don't normally speak like that, but I have to address it. I have been putting it off and putting it off, and I kept trying to figure out why am I putting this off? I don't think I've never traveled that far, and I certainly haven't traveled that far alone. And so it's a little intrepidation. But I promise you, just like everything else, Danny, what are we doing?
Yes.
Slapping fear in the face. So it's going down. Girls going down. We'll see. But I'm scheduled to leave out of here on the 15th. So we'll see what happens.
I hope you have a blast. I know your inner child is just raring to go.
Can't
Um,
wait.
Now, something you mentioned, because you said that if you don't face it in one area, it's just going to keep coming around, right?
Yeah.
The challenge is going to keep coming. And to me, that sounds like what happens, I know you were in the live last week, when you are beefing with your inner child, if you refuse to just give her the time and attention that she needs from
Baby,
you, she is going to rebel and she is going to hijack something else, whether it's your
you know
love,
what?
your professional environment, right?
Yep,
Your church life. You're going to continue to
yep,
attract fake friends,
yep,
people who don't really love you, who are going to reject you and allow you to repeat that process of being rejected by the person you're seeking genuine love from, so you can finally give her what she's asking for. So she can finally have her story told. You need to
yep.
be her witness. You need to be the voice that shares that testimony with others. If you're not willing to be her advocate, she's going to work against you.
Yep. Yep. It's like a slap in the face, I would imagine, for your inner child that you are here, you are available. If you don't protect me, who's going to protect me? If you don't do it. And I'm telling you, I don't know, it's kind of like which came first, the chicken or the egg. But once you start to do it for yourself, there's this kind of confidence that comes. Just like, oh, okay, I didn't die, nothing got broken. I stood up for myself, whatever it is. It could be something so simple. Like for me, I don't like it when people are rude to me. That just something about that sends me over the edge. And so just being able to say, no, no, let's put a pin in it. I'll be back. Just that, creating that distance and that space. Every time I do that for myself, my little girl understands, oh, yeah, she has me. She really isn't going to let anybody not even talk rough. You don't get to talk rough to me, let alone be in my space doing things that vex my spirit or keep me out of alignment and out of peace. So every time you do it, for me anyway, it feels like you build this capacity. And with that capacity comes this confidence. And you just begin to really trust that inner voice. Your inner child begins to trust you more. It's like the gift that keeps on giving.
Mhm.
So I don't know if the confidence to do it comes first, or I don't know what comes first, but I'm telling you, the cyclical thing starts to happen. The more you do it, the easier it gets, the more you feel good about yourself, because you really are keeping away those things that drain your energy. Trust me. I mean, just having folks in your space that don't mean you any well, that drains your energy. I don't care if it's subtle, covert, overt, it drains you because your mind has to deal with that somehow. And so, nah, I think it is so much better now to just be your own advocate. Just it takes some doing, it takes some practice, especially if you have been taught not to advocate for yourself, silence and to hide in shame, all that stuff. But the flip side of it is, I'm telling you, it's the freedom, it's the light, it is the ability to do the scary thing, to talk about it out loud, to hopefully set somebody else free.
Yes, right. And if you don't take the scary step, you don't get the benefit, right?
But
You
you
don't get
don't
to
get the
reap the
smiles.
reward.
You don't get the Danny. Honestly, I don't know that I would have been able to do this work because there's some intimacy about it and being vulnerable and just telling it. You have to be vulnerable because I don't know how it's going to hit the world. I don't know what people will say. Oh, how dare you talk about that? Anybody could say anything. But I've learned to not even worry about it. People gonna say, I don't care what you do. I don't care how well-meaning you try to do it or how skillful you do it. There's probably gonna be somebody that could critique it anyway. So I just don't worry anymore about that. I've been able to silence even that voice of what will people think. It still scares me, to take the step, but ultimately, I have to silence some of that noise. And that's been a gift, not hearing all those naysaying voices in your own head. It's just, I'm telling you, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Now, speaking of those voices, did religion complicate your decision to go no contact at all?
I won't say that it complicated it, but everybody knows the 10 Commandments. You honor your mother and your father so that your days, will be long in the land. I like that, Denny, in that it's one of the only commandments that has a caveat to it. It says so that your days will be long. So knowing that, it got a little tricky for me because it's how do I do this as an adult? Because I'm not even operating from that child anymore who was throwing a tantrum and just wanted to be seen and heard and dealt with. I'm a rational adult now. And I do believe, personally, I'm a Christian too. And I do believe that the Bible is true. I believe that it is wise to honor. And so I never wanted to just, it's not about trashing my mother. I recognize what happened. I know what happened. But how do you honor someone and still create the space and set a boundary like that? Two things can be true at the same time. You can love your parent, you can honor them like the Bible say, and you can still say, I don't want you in my space because it's not safe. All of that can be true at the same time. And so it did take me some time to work that out, because I wasn't even in the conversation that my mother and I had, the ultimate conversation, I was never rude. I don't remember saying any bad words, and I know tons of bad words, but it was my goal, my intention when I went into the conversation was not to be unhinged, even though I was a bit unhinged. I didn't want to be so unhinged to the place that I lost sight of what I was trying to accomplish, which is, this is the boundary. This cannot go forward the way we've gone. I will still be respectful to you. I will still be the person that I want to be, and still accomplish what I need for me, which is ultimately, I'm gonna have to give us some space, and I'm gonna do so respectfully. So I feel like I still win because I get to live the way I want to. I get to honor. I believe that you should honor your parents. I think they gave you life, and there's so much that comes with that. I am a mother. I know how I want my children to treat me, or how I want them to be in my presence. And so I think we mirror that too. But at the same time, I also want my children, just like I did, to have a voice. My kids could get on here and tell a story. They got a story to tell. But the difference is, Dani, I would be standing right behind them saying, yeah, you're right. That did happen. And I'm sorry that happened. And I take full responsibility for my part in that. And if there's anything I can do to help make amends moving forward, I promise I won't do that again, and honor that, and honor their boundaries. That's the difference. And so, yeah, I think that's the work. That's a part of breaking. That's when you know that you've at least started to scratch the surface of dealing with this generational kind of trauma. You acknowledge it, you understand that you don't want to perpetuate it, and all those things can be true at the same time. You can set that boundary and still honor your parent and still move on without them.
Absolutely right. And I think we honor our parent when they show us, again, when we have the courage to see the truth, and they are showing us again and again throughout our entire lives that they cannot show up to being our parent.
Mm-hmm.
The cycle of abuse is not going to change. We honor them by giving them the space that they need to confront themselves, to pursue their own healing. We get out of their way, and we stop asking them to give us something that they can't. And we say, okay, and we step away. And it's important to acknowledge that giving of space, that boundary, that distance is a form of honoring your parent when your parent is abusing you.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Oh. Dani, I'm still here. We are all in his playtime.
Okay, yes.
You can edit that out.
That's okay. We are just about done. I have, I think, one or two questions left for you.
Okay.
Have you gone no contact with anyone else as a result of going no contact with your parent?
Yeah. As a consequence, my sister, my biological sister, who I grew up with in the same house, she and I don't speak. That whole dynamic happened together. If we were ever able to do that work, that would be a master study. Oh my gosh, because that thing happened in a unit. And so, yeah, it wasn't going to be possible for me to deal with her too. That could happen later. I don't say no to anything. I would never say, oh, we'll never. Who knows? I don't know what tomorrow holds. But for me, it was also a part of what I needed to do so that I could move forward and not going back and forth. Let me just cut this, make this a clean break. Let me focus on how I'm going to heal, and just doing the work for myself. So
Right.
that was necessary too. Will we speak again and be in contact? I don't know. Who knows?
Um, so forgiveness is another kind of like Christian buzzword that comes up when we start talking about this. Where do you stand on forgiveness and or reconciliation? What is your take on that?
I just, again, I am a Christian, and it wasn't as tricky as one might think, Dani, because I do think forgiveness is really, you've heard people say this 1,000 times. It's not for them, it's for you. I believe that it is, because it was a process for me. I didn't wake up. I was very angry. I was very hurt as I began to peel back all the layers of everything that had happened and the impact. But ultimately, you get to the place where you understand. I think when you are able to unpack it all and say, that happened, my mother was this way. I promise you, my daughter really helped me with this thing of compassion. And because I can have compassion, my daughter granted me compassion. I wasn't a perfect parent. Parented, I was traumatized. So some of that trauma inevitably was going to get on my children. You would just have to be naive. But that was what motivated me to go to therapy. I was like, oh no, what we will not do is do a whole lifetime a repeat. So it motivated me to go to therapy. But those kids did not escape unscathed. And so being able to face my own children and allow them to sit in that pain that I may have caused them, and to watch them show me grace and to show me compassion, it really allowed me to look back and say, oh my God, I am a parent. I can see how, if you are traumatized, how your trauma may spill over onto your children. So it's not very difficult for me to look back and see, oh, she was traumatized too. So her trauma spilled over onto you. So by my children extending grace and compassion to me, it gave me the capacity to look back and show grace and compassion to my mother. You can do that. And it has certainly aided me in forgiving, because you can see the whole cycle. You see, oh, it doesn't excuse it. It doesn't make that person even healthy enough for you to be with today. It doesn't erase any of that. But what you can do, girl, it goes, for me, it's the same thing as Christ was gracious with us. Then I extend that same grace. So I don't have to walk around with rocks in my jaws, reliving the whole story over and over again. I absolutely forgive you. I still don't want to be in your company, though. I still don't have to subject myself to the barbs. I don't have to subject myself to that. That is so, working that out. If that's the thing that's tripping you up, don't let that trip you up, because I'm telling you, two things can be true at the same time. You can forgive them, and you can even love them and still say, no, I don't want to sit next to you at the picnic. No, because when I sit next to you at the picnic, you say nasty things. And when you say nasty things, that triggers me. And if you're not going to stop saying nasty things, I'm not going to sit next to you at the picnic. I mean, that's like we teach that in third grade. You don't sit next to these people if they antagonize you. So yes, it is okay. I promise you, it is okay to say no. It is okay. And you can still, I think, live biblically. Now, in terms of reconciliation, again, I'll leave that up to, I don't know, because reconciliation takes two. I'm perfectly willing, but you have to also present and be perfectly willing. So it's not on me. I'm not the one that's stopping the reconciliation. I'm not hard-hearted, but are you going to live within these boundaries? Are you going to see me as a human being? Are you going to respect what I say? Are you going to do it consistently? And if you're not going to do that, I'm not the holdup here.
Right.
You are the holdup, and I'm quite okay with that. So yeah, I hope nobody is really, I don't know. That's how I see it. It works for me.
Yeah, that pressure of being a good daughter is heavy on a lot of women in general. But again, with Black women, you coming out of the church, right? It's
Yep.
so baked into culture that the relationship between the mother and the daughter requires so
Yep.
much.
Yep. I hear it. I got it. I felt it. I still feel the pressure. I still feel the eyes on me. And sometimes at family functions, like, you really just gonna do this to your mama. I'm
Right.
not doing anything to anybody. What I am doing is saying, I know when I'm comfortable and when I'm not comfortable. And if this makes me uncomfortable, guess what? I'm not going to do it. And y'all gonna have to get over it. And I'm so sorry. I just wish more of us would do it, because I know that there are people sitting around me suffering too. I know you are, because I know your story. But you don't see, I don't know, but there is another way. That's what I do know. There's another way. You don't have to take it just because it's your mother. I think that lends itself, it leads you into accepting that abuse across the board in all other, other places. That's where it started. At least that's where it started for me.
That's right. And for victims of parental narcissistic abuse, that's where we learn it.
Mm-hmm.
So our final question, going into Mother's Day, Mother's Day is coming up.
Yes.
How do you experience Mother's Day, and do you have any tips for other women who are maybe newly no contact and facing Mother's Day this year?
Fortunately for me, I have a daughter, and I tell you, that's a whole learning curve in itself, because that relationship did not, leave unscathed either. All of that, it still permeates. You know, abuse is insidious. It gets into everything. You have to just put a stop to it. But fortunately, she and I are cognizant and consciously working to be better with one another, to make sure that this does not perpetuate itself. And so we will be together on Mother's Day. So generally, I'm generally in contact with my kids on Mother's Day. Not being in contact with my mother is something I have come to accept. That is what it is. But for me too, there's so many other women, y'all. I just made place and space for other women who love me properly, or in a way that feels like love to me. So generally on Mother's Day, I'm in contact with those people, all those women who I've met either through travel or who have proven themselves to me over the years that they are for me. We are always in contact, whether it's just a text, a tweet, whatever it is. So those things feed me. I focus on the things that I do have. I have those relationships because I feel better about myself, because I'm able to be vulnerable. I can nurture these new relationships, and it's enough. That's enough. It's enough for me. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. I don't feel like, where's my balloon? Where's my cake? I don't feel like that. Um, I say feel yourself, or look around you and see there's so much there's love in so many other places, in so many other forms. It doesn't have to necessarily be that. I have an adoptive mom. I have, a spiritual mother. I have a spiritual sister. And then I have just a legion of other women that I've made contact with. I fill myself up with that. I fill myself up with that. I look forward to sitting down, having dinner with my daughter. I look forward to having some tough conversations, maybe some tears. I look forward to feeling and being present and doing that stuff. So yeah, I just say find other ways. There are other sources of love. And there's nothing like a mother's love, but trust me, you'll be okay. It'll be okay. I promise. That's all I can tell you. It'll be okay.
Yes, you will be okay. Because the truth is, when you're being abused by your parent, you're not getting that anyway.
No, it's that contentious kind of eggshell walking, hoping nothing goes wrong in this hour we're together. It's tedious. It's tedious. And would you rather have that? I know I personally prefer when I'm in the company of people where I can breathe easy. I don't have to worry about them saying nothing nasty to me. I don't have to worry about being on it. I don't have to worry about that stuff. And so, yeah, it's so much better when you just try it. Just, yeah.
Be brave and take the leap. You will not
Yep.
regret it. Your inner child will thank you.
No.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that and just being here today. I'm so excited to share this with other women. I know this is right on time for somebody heading up to Mother's Day
I
next
hope so.
soon.
It's the
It'll be
14th, isn't it?
it'll be next week when I actually post this. So I know somebody is like dreading it and needs to just engage with your vibration. So thank you for
Yes.
being here and sharing with us.
Find the love around you. It's there. Just open yourself up and look around. It's there. There are people and I don't know. I take such joy in my grandchildren. Just that call. My grandboy's gonna call again. And so it's that, taking the time, stopping, taking the time to enjoy that. It may seem like a nuisance sitting on the phone, but I enjoy it. It's like, okay, that's another form of being fed. It fills that space for me. So don't dread it, ladies. It can be awkward or it feels a little different, but I promise you, you can fill those spaces with sun, love, flowers, all kinds of stuff.
Yes, absolutely. And to that end, I just opened up a Facebook group specifically for Black women who are healing from maternal narcissistic abuse. So I'll put a link to that in the description here. Also, between now and Mother's Day, I'm offering consults for 50% off for any women who need that, who just want to like get it figured out, have a check-in. So those links will be in the description. Um, Thank you for tuning in. I really hope that this blessed somebody.
I hope so too, Danny. Thank you for the work, Danny. Thank you for representing sisters and putting this out there because who knew no contact was a thing?
Thank you. I so appreciate you. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you. We'll talk again soon, Danny.
So we'll talk. Bye.
Bye.